We have two aspects of our consciousness. We have our subjective consciousness. That's the free-willed entity called you and me that has a soul that's on a journey back to source, that gets to like and dislike, gets to be happy, gets to be sad, gets to choose or not choose. It's a free-willed being. That is our subjective consciousness. That's this field around us that exists beyond space and time. It can be measured, but it's an electromagnetic field. Then there is that objective consciousness that exists beyond space and time that's observing all of this into reality. And that objective consciousness is very sensitive to how we think and feel. Thoughts are electric and feelings are magnetic. And how you think and how you feel, called a state of being, broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. So if you're walking around every day frustrated and suffering, thinking and feeling that way, what you're saying to that objective consciousness as a subjective creator, okay, divine intelligence, giver of life, who endorses who I'm being, I'm expressing a certain level of suffering today. So now I'm creating suffering in my life, but bringing it in a way that I least expect, that surprises me and leaves no doubt that it's come from you so I can suffer more. So that's karma. Well, karma happens every day, and because we're thinking and feeling in the same way, we keep creating the same external environment. We create that same external environment, we react in the same way of thinking and feeling. That same thinking and feeling then reinforces that same environment, and there's a tango between the outer world and the inner world, and that's called karma. Break the addiction to the emotion, change your habituations of thought and actions, change your feelings that you've memorized, and all of a sudden there is no karma. See, we're not punished for our sins, we're punished by our sins. So then the subjective consciousness, when it marries with or unifies with that objective consciousness, the only way it responds is through how we're being. So you don't pray for your prayers to be answered. You get up as if your prayers are already answered. That state of being is a level of energy that transforms every single atom in your life. The thought sends the signal out, and the feeling draws the event to you. So if you're living in a state of gratitude, what you're saying is, the event has already happened. And now, if I start thinking about when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, I just return back to the old self. The new self would never think that way. So then, the marriage of subjective consciousness, free-willed you and I, with that objective consciousness who endorses who we are, basically how we think and feel, is a loving intelligence and intelligent love. So then it has an electromagnetic frequency, and when you emulate it as a creator, in other words, you can't create from a guilty, lacking, selfish person. That's not the qualities of the divine. If you are going to create, you better emulate the divine. And what are the qualities of the divine? A loving intelligence and intelligent love. It's got a will that's so much greater than our will. It has a mind that's so much greater than our mind. It's got a love for life that's so much greater than our love for life. It is a consciousness. It's an awareness. It's observant of who we are. So then it has one rule. I honor free will, and I will endorse who you're being. So then when you and I connect to that intelligence by changing how we think and feel, what is the greatest ideal of ourselves? When you move into that elegant state of being and you're in the present moment and you're feeling empowered and divine and enriched and enthusiastic, and now it's time to create. When you create from that state of being, you're emulating the observer. And what you're saying is, observer, take a look at what I'm observing. I'm being like, I'm emulating you. So now you're looking down the telescope, I'm the lens of the telescope, and let's magnify that into our life. When that alignment takes place, and you feel connected to something greater, you would never try to force the outcome. You would never try to control the outcome. You only do that when you're living by the hormones of stress because you feel separate from possibility. When you are connected and your heart is open and you're feeling something greater, you trust in the unknown. You already know it's happened. You don't know how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, but that's not our job. So then there's a delicate balance that has to take place in the creative model between intention and surrender. Intention is getting clear on what you want, but then surrender means you're trusting in a greater mind that infinite objective intelligence to organize it in a way that's right for you. And I always say, it's like going to a restaurant. You place your order. Once you place your order, you don't get up and chase the waiter around and go in the kitchen and hassle the cook. You got to place the order and you got to get out of the way. Right. And the moment you step back in and try to control the outcome, you just doubted your creation.
Absolutely.
So this is what's taken me so long in my own personal life to get. We have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to happen. And the moment you step in, it honors free will. So then the person who's the new age person who's saying, well, I'm just going to wait for my Maserati to come to me. This is not how that works. Once you move into a new state of being and you're creating wealth, in other words, only gold creates gold. Lead doesn't create gold. And our job is to take those base emotions of anger and resentment and fear and anxiety, those base emotions, and transmute them into gold. Because right on the other side of our pain is freedom. Right on the other side of our lack is wealth or abundance. Right on the other side of our fear is courage. It's the same energy. It's just trapped in the body. And when we transmute that energy into something else, right? Mm-hmm. Now we have available energy to begin to design a destiny with. So then a person who moves into that elegant state of being where they're expanded and they're enriched and they're in love with life, then they can't go back to the old self, because that is their new state of being. So then if you practice that every day, sooner or later it's going to begin to become familiar to you. So then if you're creating wealth,
yes,
and you're in the state of being of abundant, you better not be thinking lacking thoughts, because an abundant person would never do that. You can't demonstrate that you're not making choices because you believe that there's not enough, lack of time, lack of energy, lack of money. That wealthy person abundant person would never think of it. You can't feel unworthy and lacking if you're going to be a wealthy person. So by very logic and reason, you got to lay that down and move into this state of being. Now, once you're in that state of being, you can't sit on the couch and wait for the phone call. Once you're in that state of being, you got to start making choices into the unknown from that state of being. You got to trust in the unknown. The moment you don't make the choice, you just doubted your creation. You return back to the known. And so people then, when you're in that state of being, the miraculous happens when you say, okay, I'm going to go for it. But you're not going to go for it as your limited emotional self. You're going to go for it as your unlimited self, and you begin to make those choices and you step out into the unknown. That's when the miraculous happens, and you say, oh my God, I'm so glad I made that choice. But then waking up in the morning then and priming your brain and body to make that change is the key. There's 2 times the door to the subconscious mind opens up. Excuse me, when we wake up in the morning, and we go to bed at night. Because your brain goes from deep delta brainwaves to theta brainwaves to alpha brainwaves to beta brainwaves. Why? And when you go to bed at night, it goes from beta to alpha to theta to delta. And if you can't get there, you're stuck in high beta. It's because you're driving the sports car in first gear, right? So people do whatever they can to get down there. So the brain chemistry works in accordance with this. So when you wake up in the morning and the receptors in the back of your eye pick up light, the moment that happens, your optic nerve sends a signal to the pineal gland, and the pineal gland starts making serotonin. And serotonin is the daytime neurotransmitter. In other words, serotonin gets you up and going. It gets your brain turned on. The moment it starts getting dark at night and your eye is no longer picking up visible light, the mechanism starts to change, and now because there's less light, the optic nerve sends a signal to the pineal gland. The pineal gland takes serotonin and starts carving off a couple methyl groups and turns it into melatonin. And melatonin is the nighttime neurotransmitter. So Sarah gets you up in the morning, and Mel puts you to bed at night. Now, when serotonin increases, your brainwave patterns go into beta. That's because you're going to pay attention more to the outer world. When you're in meditation and you close your eyes and you eliminate light and it's dark in the room and you play music in the background, you put earplugs in, you're getting less sensory data coming in from your environment, so the neocortex is not so preoccupied with trying to create meaning between the outer world and the inner world. You're forgetting about the outer world, and the inner world is where you're cultivating something. So then, when you close your eyes and do your meditation, then your brainwaves move into melatonin. But if you're waking up in the morning and you're waking up at 5 in the morning, guess what? your brain waves will probably be in theta or alpha. You're in your subconscious. You're past the beta thinking, right? We go to bed at night. I have friends that are artists and playwrights and musicians. They stay up till 2 in the morning. They love that 11 o'clock till 2 in the morning. They're in nighttime. They're in alpha. They got all these creative ideas. There's, me, I'm a morning person. I wake up. I'm up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. It's my time to create. I set aside a certain amount of time. That's my time, because the rest of the day I'm serving. So I like to get myself right in the morning, right? So doing that then begins to alter brainwave patterns. Now, if you move from beta to alpha, there'll come an amazing moment where if you do this right, you'll slip into theta. Now, theta is when your body is asleep, but your mind is awake.
Yes.
So think about this. If your body's asleep and you've conditioned it to be the mind through addictions or habits, the moment the body's asleep, it's no longer the mind. So there's no longer any resistance. And that's where instantaneous change takes place. If you go too far, you slip into delta, and that's called deep sleep and restorative sleep. And people say to me, well, I really can't meditate. And I say, really? Where do you meditate? Oh, in bed. What we noticed in our research, to finish that other thought, is that there comes a moment when you're in that coherent level of alpha that all of a sudden you slip into theta. And all of a sudden when theta turns on, all of a sudden you start seeing this amazing change take place. And the body becomes so relaxed, and the energy centers, the sympathetic nervous system, switches on. But instead of switching on like you're being chased by a tiger, or switching on like having an orgasm, or ejaculating, or switching on for whatever reason, it's switching on in balance with the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
So the parasympathetic nervous system settles the body down, but now the sympathetic nervous system turns on, and here comes that energy, and whoosh, it travels right up the central nervous system, and it hits the brainstem, switches on what's called a thalamic gate, the reticular activating system. All that energy now hits the train station, the docking station where all the neurons go, and boom, it hits the neocortex, and now you're producing gamma brainwave patterns. And gamma brainwaves are super conscious brainwave patterns. In other words, the inner world is the real world. The experience is so profound energetically that you never forget the moment.